Welcome to the Stories with Traction podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zahn. Thank you for joining us as we uncover how stories are one of the most important aspects of your business. We'll talk about struggles, victories, and how you can utilize strategic storytelling to inspire those around you to action. Enjoy this episode. I am extremely excited because today I am joined by Ross Johnston and Joey Bosworth. Ross is the founder of Accelerate, and Joey will be taking over as the conference director. So the reason why I have Ross and Joey on is because after our conversation with Melissa Moody from Gate It, as soon as the call was over, she said, "You know who you should talk to? You need to talk to Ross." And Ross brought Joey on board. So I just want to give you a little bit of a background on Accelerate. So Accelerate focuses on the systems, competitive advantages, and industries that move the future forward for municipalities and regions that need a solid kick in the pants. It is more than a conference, it's an attitude adjustment where attendees feel like active participants in creating the future. I love that. So Joey and Ross, welcome to the Stories with Traction podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time so much. So I wanna dive into this a little bit. So one of the things I had mentioned to both of you is I've been all over the country, even through the pandemic. So I've traveled all over the U.S. I'll primarily focus on the West Coast, believe it or not. And I see more and more people itching to get back to in-person events. And I think there's going to be a huge pendulum swing as soon as COVID is in our rear view mirror, where there's going to be conferences, there's going to be a lot more in-person events. And one of the things that has become paramount is the merger between the local municipalities, which is, I see what you focus on, businesses, and corporate social responsibility is huge, and blending all three of those and pulling the community together. And just based on different things that I went through looking into Accelerate, it seems like you're doing that. So can you speak to that about bringing not only government agencies, but also businesses and nonprofits together in a unified fashion?
Sure. Yeah. So what Accelerate is it's a was a 2-day. Now it's last time was a 1-day conference, and really I think of it as a giant sandbox. And the sandbox is focused on a specific part of Alaska's economy, and then divide that part into pieces. Let me give you an example. Actually, the conference has 4 tracks, and the tracks are focused on industries that are specific to Alaska, where we can actually be awesome in. And the tracks that we focused on this year was energy. Joey, help me out here. What were the other 3 tracks?
We had healthcare.
Oh, 6 tracks. Darn it. I'm sorry. It's been, hey, and for the record, for your listeners, let them know that I have like a really awesome case of COVID right now. So I am having a little bit of a head cold. So I think I should let Joey step in a little bit more often.
Yeah. Well, what we did is we split up this idea of entrepreneurial enthusiasm and opportunity into multiple tracks. And within each of those tracks, we had multiple speakers who all had examples about how they were taking advantage of this opportunity, and more importantly, how people in the audience or anybody who was interested could do that as well. And I think, specifically when it comes to bringing both public, private, and anyone else, all these different actors together into one room and on one subject is the fact that these opportunities are going to benefit the state as a whole, or the community as a whole. So everyone should be interested in additional economic activity, and that's what we try to bring across in the format. Is that it doesn't matter if you're working for the state of Alaska or the city of Anchorage, or if you're just trying to start your own business. we should all be working together, and we should all be sharing information about how we can best take advantage of these opportunities. And that concept proved incredibly popular. People who are working for the government want to make sure that their work is having an impact, and they need partnerships with private enterprise to make that happen in many cases. And on the flip side, if you're trying to start a business, it turns out there are a lot of programs out there that can help you, and there's a lot of expertise that's available in the public sector. So by bringing all those actors together, we found that things moved a lot faster, and there were a lot more opportunities brought to light. So we were really happy with how that concept worked.
Yeah, and I think just to go back to Matt's question, which was like, how do you get people involved? As far as the whole sandboxing, each track had 3 different segments. It had TED style talks, it had panel discussions, and then it also had a workshop. And at any given moment, there was going to be a track that was having a panel workshop or a TED style talk. And you very much were in a choose your own adventure type scenario as an attendee to decide what you wanted to go to. But the responsibility of like who actually decided what was inside that panel discussion, that TED style talk, who are the speakers, and who was giving the workshop, that was up to one person, the track lead. And all we did is we said, hey, this is what each track looks like. This is what these are the boxes inside of each track. Go ahead and fill it. And we put, as far as track leads to manage each track, we had 6 of them. I think 2 or 3 were government employees. A couple of them were university, and then a couple were private party. And then they would involve other people who themselves were, government, university, private business, and have them be part of the workshop speakers, panel discussions, etc. So like our input to make all these groups work together really was just kind of asking them to be part of our sandboxes and to help them and then just give them direction on how to play inside of it.
And you could do that by basically not just leveraging your own network, but asking someone else to leverage theirs. And so you had people who were asking these speakers to be involved that already had a lot of credibility within whatever community that they were going to be discussing. So that enabled us to get people that we probably wouldn't have been able to convince otherwise if it had just been us making the ask.
Yeah, see, I'm fascinated by this, and the reason why I'm fascinated. So I live within a 4-hour drive radius of 40 million people. So as far as from a resource perspective, we have an insane amount of resources in the area that I'm in. And then I hear what you're saying, and I'm guessing that where you are, especially geographically speaking, you're somewhat isolated. So was this concept built out of isolation, where you're going to put on this event, you're going to create this movement, you're going to bring people together, this is going to be a surge of resources to really create something that really is, to me, it sounds almost like it's a networking event on steroids, right? It's like you're networking, you're building up the community. You're basically saying it doesn't matter where anyone's located, it doesn't matter where your business is in Alaska, you can thrive because of X, Y, and Z. And you're setting up these tracks in order to amplify those different sectors. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ross did a really good job, I think, when he created this concept of making sure that there's lots of opportunity that isn't structured. So you have time where people are meeting organically, whether it be over food or between sessions or at some of the evening events where that networking can happen, but with the catalyst of people having just heard some really inspiring or thought-provoking presentations. And so you have this situation where not only do you have Alaskans who may be from different parts of the state getting together, but also you have timing wise a period of time where people are pretty hungry for that kind of connection. And I think that networking is something that just hasn't been really very easy at all in the past couple of years. So This last session especially was really exciting for people because they were getting to interact and getting to build these ideas in person for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, and to speak to that, we made certain that there was no programming during lunch, right? So we like, my belief was like the magic happens in the negative space. So we tried to create as much space in between the tracks so that like it wasn't just you had time to go to the bathroom and run back or check your phone messages, but you had time to actually have conversations with either the speakers or with other people. And for the most part, we did a pretty good job, except with a couple of the tracks, they did go over their time, so people had less time. But overall, people they said that this was what was meaningful to me is some of the feedback I got was that they said they made meaningful connections that they'll have for the rest of their life, which I've never heard from a conference before.
That's fantastic. No, I appreciate you mentioning that. That's awesome. So where's the future of this going? So we're in 2022. Everything I've read in the last few weeks is nothing but optimism. I feel like in the next few months, I think that it's going to start to get really good really soon. And I could be wrong. I've been wrong. I've been wrong before in the last 2 years, but I see a surge of optimism. So what's the future for Accelerate Alaska this year?
Yeah, well, I am really excited because we had this great, we started with a lot of advantages. Ross put together an incredible program for several years. And so people know the brand. They know that they're going to have this great experience at an Accelerate Alaska event. But now we get to get creative, and we get to make things bigger or more exciting, try out new things, and we know that people will already have this trust in the brand. For 2022, we're going to try out something interesting with the intro. Basically, what we're going to do is get all of the speakers together a little bit before we have the main event, and we're going to have them do some brainstorming, get to know each other, and settle into the theme of the conference before they come back for the main event and give their presentations. And that's going to have the effect, we hope, of getting everyone more on the same page in terms of what is the overall message, not just what are the subjects where we're going to be talking about, but what is the larger message that we want to communicate to attendees. And this year, we're going to be talking about opportunities in the cold climate. So obviously, climate change is very much the top of mind for a lot of people, and that has a very unique effect in the northern part of the world, and specifically in Alaska. It's something that really affects almost every aspect of our lives. And so there's a lot of opportunity that comes along with that. There's a lot of focus on the very real and very devastating effects of climate change, but the reality is the business has to adapt to the changing climate, and there are specific ways that that's going to have to happen in Alaska. And some of those lessons are going to be transferable to other parts of the world as well. But we want people to be thinking about what are the business opportunities in a changing northern climate going forward. And so obviously that's a pretty broad topic, and we're still kind of trying to figure out exactly what that means in a granular sense. But we think that this vision is going to be really exciting for a lot of people. And we're not just drawing from Alaska for speakers. We're going to have some people coming from outside of Alaska and outside the United States to share their perspectives as well.
I appreciate you mentioning other parts of the world. And one of the things that I'm interested to learn more about is there's a lot of business leaders that want to do what you're doing. They see a need for connection. Ross, you had mentioned that connection, that networking, and individuals that they're going to have that point of communication for the rest of their lives, which is fantastic. They want to bring business and nonprofits and organization and government agencies together, and they just haven't been able to pull it off. So can you speak to individuals listening that they may want to do something similar where they have a day event, they want to bring people together? Can you go over just a few of the nuts and bolts in order to do something like that and pull that off?
Ross, why don't you speak to? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, for me, it's all about the fun, right? And and you have to, if you have to find people who believe in the fun with you. And if you feel like you have to convince someone it's going to be fun, like that they have to work for the fun, then that's probably not the right person to ask along in your journey. So what I did in order to get people involved, because they other people, the track leads, the volunteers, they put in a lot of hours in order to make this happen, is I just looked for the yeses. So I looked for the people who identified with the vision, were excited about it, and I didn't have to baby in order to move them forward. And I made sure that the people I was asking were the right people doing the right things. I wasn't trying to like put if it was a marketing person, I had them do marketing. I didn't have, I would get a volunteer coordinator to coordinate volunteers. I wasn't trying to get people to do stuff that was outside of their expertise, because I really wanted to maximize their time involvement. And you don't get that by having them learn something new. So the very first step of like putting on an event really is just figuring out a date and a location and a theme. And once you have those set up and you block out the time as far as like what you want to accomplish during that day, with as much negative space as possible, as we talked about earlier. And then once you've blocked out that time, then you start assigning those time blocks to different people, to the yeses. And then once they have said yes to it, then you just give them like timelines as to saying, this is when I need this to have this done by. And all you're doing at that point is just like following up with people and making sure that they're getting the stuff done that they'd already committed to. And then beyond that, it's pretty much, it just making sure things are moving on track, and that's it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And while you were speaking, Ross, one of the things that just popped in my mind was a book by Jim Collins, Good to Great. And he has an entire chapter in there on, first you have to get the right people on the bus. And then once they're on the bus, you have to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. And so you're saying about marketing and promotion and the volunteerism. And so you get all the right people on the bus. Those are the people that are giving you those yeses. And then you have to get the right people on the right seats. So one more question for you guys is about these tracks. How did you decide the different tracks? How did you pick them? And then how do you, I guess it goes back to your point, Ross, about you already have the yeses. So then if people are saying yes and they're passionate about a certain track, I could see giving them the leeway to bring people on and set that up. But how are you establishing the tracks? Is it based on what audience members are asking for? Or is it based on the different needs that you see in certain regions? How are you picking the different tracks for these events?
Well, the tracks were based on like what I intuitively felt was going to had the greatest opportunity for our state, and where the opportunity could actually be leveraged here in Alaska, where like the money made would stay, right? Because a lot of money is made in Alaska, but then it goes, to Europe, goes to Puget Sound, the fisheries, goes to the cruise ships, I wanted to make sure that the opportunities were specific for Alaskans to stay in Alaska. What I've come to realize though, is like, that's not enough. You got to build networks. And so if we build tracks in the future, we really have to build them around a certain, like as Joey had talked about, cold climate industries. Because what we're doing at this point is, as you mentioned, it is like a networking event on steroids. And the more networking we can, the more fruitful networking that we can promote across all the tracks, the greater potential it has for the state after the event, and for all the participants. So that's kind of where my head's at right now.
That's awesome. I appreciate you mentioning that. And I also very much appreciate both of your time. I know that you're both extremely busy. So where can people find either of you? What is the best place that they can go to find out more about Accelerate?
Well, there's the website, accelerateak.com, has all the old information on it. But if anyone wants to reach out to me to do something similar for their town, they're welcome to email me at ross@trackleads.org. finept, FINEPT.com. Joey.
I think the best way reach out to me is either my email, joeybosworth@gmail.com, or you can find us both on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to give you more information or share resources there.
Perfect.
And if you're interested in listening to any of the actual content, there's a podcast, Accelerate Alaska, and there's also a YouTube channel. So those are always kind of fun to hear what they sounded like.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I did listen to some of those podcast episodes, and they were fantastic. You did an awesome job. So highly recommend that to everyone listening. Also, to make it uber convenient for everyone, I will include links in the show notes. People can just click and go from there. So Ross and Joey, thank you so much for your time today. I very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having us, Matt.
Thank you for listening to the Stories with Traction podcast. If you have a story that you would like to share, feel free to drop an email to matt@mattzahn.com with the subject line Stories with Traction. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I share tons of resources on how you can be a better storyteller. Remember, if you want to persuade with power and inspire those around you to action, you must share more stories.